There is a certain kind of woman who makes the whole world pause. Not because she demands it. Not because she walks into rooms announcing herself with noise or need. But because something about her, the way light bends around her, the way gravity seems to negotiate with her hips, simply will not allow the world to continue at its normal speed. Amara Johnson was that woman. At 25, she had the kind of deep brown skin that looked like it had been poured from a vat of warm honey and dark chocolate swirled together by someone who took their time. Someone who understood that beauty wasn't meant to be rushed. Her natural hair, thick, coiled, magnificent. She usually wore in protective styles. Braids that fell past her shoulders, locks pinned up with gold accessories, or big wash and go curls that bounced when she laughed, which was often. Her eyes were dark brown and wide. The kind of eyes that held entire conversations before her mouth opened. Her lashes were long without assistance. Her smile could stop a Seoul subway train. And Lord, could that woman dress. On a Tuesday, a regular, unremarkable Tuesday in the Gangnam district of Seoul, Amara walked out of her apartment building in a burnt orange Valentino midi dress with a structured bodice and flutter sleeves, paired with cream-colored Bottega Veneta mules that click-clacked against the pavement like a metronome set to confidence. Her gold jewelry, a thick chain necklace, matching cuffs, and small hoops, caught the morning sun. Her small Fendi baguette bag sat in the crook of her arm like it had been born there. She was going to buy mangoes. The Ajumma running the fruit stall near the corner stopped mid-argument with her supplier to stare. A group of teenage boys took photos with their phones at a distance, too intimidated to approach. A Porsche slowed down on the street beside her and the driver, a man in his 40s with the confident posture of old money, lowered his window and simply said, in accented English, "You are extraordinary." Amara smiled, bought her mangoes, tipped the Ajumma generously, and walked home. This was a Wednesday for her. This was ordinary. She had been living in Seoul for 3 years, ever since she married Kim Jae-won, the man her mother back in Atlanta had called a walking red flag wrapped in a designer suit, and who Amara's heart had called home the moment she saw him, Jae-won. Even thinking his name did something embarrassing to her pulse. She had met him in New York, at a rooftop event in Manhattan that she'd attended with her best friend Destiny Washington, who had somehow, through a series of networking miracles and sheer audacious charm, gotten them both onto a guest list for a party that had a dress code that simply said, expensive. Amara had worn a cobalt blue Givenchy jumpsuit that night, cinched at the waist with a wide Alexander McQueen belt, and patent leather Christian Louboutin heels that added 4 inches to her already considerable 5'8" frame. Destiny had shown up in a forest green Jacquemus dress so short and so perfectly fitted that 3 women at the party had asked her where she bought it and one had asked if she was a model. "Baby, I'm a paralegal from Cincinnati," Destiny had told her. "But thank you." They had been laughing about this. Amara nearly doubling over in her Givenchy, Destiny pressing a hand to her green-covered chest, when Kim Jae-won appeared. He was wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit, slim-cut and perfect, with a white dress shirt open at the collar, no tie, a single silver watch on his wrist, Patek Philippe, though Amara didn't know that then, and shoes so polished they reflected the rooftop lights. He was tall for a Korean man, lean, with a jaw that seemed architecturally designed for the sole purpose of being attractive. His hair was black and slightly longer on top, swept to one side. He was, in the simplest terms, devastating. He had looked at Amara. Amara had looked at him. Destiny, standing between them, had looked at both of them and said under her breath, "Oh, we're doing this tonight." His name, she learned over the course of that first 2-hour conversation, was Kim Jae-won. He was Korean. He was based in Seoul. He was 32 years old. He was in New York for business, a word he said smoothly, with a slight pause before it that Amara would later learn to recognize as a very carefully constructed full stop. He was funny. He was attentive. He asked her about her life in Atlanta, about her work as a freelance fashion stylist, about the cobalt blue Givenchy, about her favorite restaurants in a city he barely knew. He laughed at her jokes with genuine, unguarded warmth, and when he laughed, a dimple appeared on his left cheek that Amara privately decided was her personal undoing. They exchanged numbers. He called the next morning. They went to dinner 3 nights in a row. He flew back to Seoul and called her every day for 6 weeks. He flew back to New York to take her to a Beyoncé concert. He bought her flowers that filled her entire apartment. He met Destiny at brunch and charmed her so thoroughly that Destiny called Amara afterward and said, "I want to be suspicious of this man, but he knew exactly what habeas wrecker was when I brought it up and I don't know, Amara. I just don't know." They were married 8 months after they met. The wedding was small, a ceremony in Seoul with his family and a celebration dinner in Atlanta with hers. Amara's mother, Mrs. Patricia Johnson, had flown to Korea in a stunning purple Ankara suit with matching head wrap and declared the country very organized, and her son-in-law very handsome and therefore very suspicious. She had pulled Amara aside before the ceremony and said, "Baby, I like him, but he has a kind of smile that knows more than it tells. You understand me?" Amara had laughed. "Mama, you say that about everyone. I say it about the ones who matter," Patricia had said, adjusting Amara's veil. The ceremony had been beautiful. Amara wore a custom ivory gown from a Korean designer J1 had commissioned, with gold embroidery at the hem and sleeves that paid subtle tribute to West African textile patterns. J1's idea, which had made Amara cry with her whole chest in the fitting room. He had a way of doing that, of seeing her so fully that the sight of it was almost unbearable. They moved into a penthouse apartment in Gangnam, a place so sleek and beautiful that Amara had spent the first week just walking through it, touching walls and countertops, unable to believe it was her life. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the Han River. A walk-in wardrobe that Amara organized by designer, then by color, then by season. A kitchen she cooked in enthusiastically and J1 occupied mostly to make coffee and look handsome against the marble countertops. Life was good. Life was warm and designer-clad and punctuated by long dinners and late nights and Sunday mornings in bed with J1's arm heavy and familiar across her waist. She didn't ask about the business. She had asked, of course, in the beginning. What exactly did he do? The answer was always architecturally constructed, smooth and beautiful and ultimately unoccupiable. Import and export, investments, consulting, partnerships. Real words arranged in patterns that meant nothing. She had pushed twice, gently, and both times J1 had kissed her temple and said, "I will always keep you safe, Amara." In a tone so tender it answered a different question than the one she'd asked. She had stopped asking. There were signs, in retrospect. The men who appeared sometimes, serious-faced, quiet, in dark clothing, who spoke to J1 in rapid Korean and disappeared. The phone calls he took in the other room. The way certain people in certain restaurants stood when J1 entered. The way her mother-in-law, a small, impeccable woman named Mrs. Kim who wore Chanel exclusively and communicated mostly through loaded silences and very precise eyebrow movements, had looked at Amara on the wedding day with an expression that contained, buried deeply beneath the formal warmth, something that looked uncomfortably like pity. But this was her life. This was her husband. This was her burnt orange Valentino on a Tuesday morning. Her mangoes, her soul, her Han River at sunset. She was happy. She was sure of it. She was almost certain. She was working very hard at it. Her best friend Destiny had moved to Seoul 6 months after Amara. "I am not," Destiny had announced, "letting you be fabulous in Korea without me," and had found work with an international law firm downtown. She lived in a beautiful apartment in Itaewon, a neighborhood known for its international energy and excellent brunch spots. They saw each other twice a week at minimum. They went to every designer pop-up and fashion event the city offered. They were, together, a spectacle Seoul had not prepared itself for and had been forced to simply accept. The mangoes were sweet that Tuesday morning. J1 was away on business, import and export, investments, consulting for 5 days. Destiny had texted her that morning, "Babe, come by this afternoon? Got something for you plus made your tea plus. Also, I may be having a situation that requires your professional and personal consultation." Amara had smiled at her phone, dressed in a cream Celine blazer set with wide-leg trousers and cream and gold Manolo Blahniks, picked up her Chloe saddle bag, and gone to visit her friend. She was happy. She was sure of it. Destiny Washington had moved through life with the particular velocity of a woman who had been told no so many times that the word had ceased to have meaning for her. She was 27, tall and full-figured. With warm dark skin and natural hair she wore almost exclusively in high buns adorned with silk scarves or gold pins. She had a wide smile, a sharp tongue, a law degree from Howard University, and a fashion sense that could only be described as aggressively intentional. On the day Amara came to visit, she was wearing a raspberry pink Stella McCartney power suit. Blazer nipped at the waist, trousers wide and commanding, with a white silk blouse beneath and hot pink patent leather Jimmy Choo pumps that were frankly violent in their beauty. Her earrings were large gold hoops. Her lipstick matched her suit exactly. She looked like someone had pointed at the concept of authority and said, "Make it cute." Amara buzzed up from the lobby and Destiny met her at the door with a mug of ginger tea and the expression of a woman holding something behind her back. "You look stunning, obviously," Destiny said, eyeing the Celine. "The cream is working. The shoes are threatening. Come in." "The shoes threaten me first," Amara said, stepping inside and kissing her cheek. "What's the situation that requires consultation? Are we talking professional or emotional?" "We'll get there," Destiny said, in a tone that was doing several suspicious things at once. Amara walked down the entryway hallway toward the living room, sipping her tea, talking about the mango from earlier and a vintage Dior piece she'd found at a consignment shop in Apgujeong, and whether J1 would be back in time for the gallery opening on Saturday. She turned the corner into the living room. She stopped. The tea mug stayed at her lips, but she was no longer drinking. She was not entirely certain she was still breathing. The living room was Destiny's living room. She knew this. She had been here 100 times. She knew the sectional and the plant wall and the framed prints. But the far wall, the wide, cream-colored wall that Destiny had previously kept empty because she could never decide what to put on it, was no longer empty. It was covered, not chaotically, deliberately. Photographs, printed and framed, hung in careful rows. They were of a boy, Korean boy, no older than 10, perhaps 11 at the very outside. In some photos he was smiling, in others serious. In others he was in a school uniform or a park or what appeared to be a birthday party with a cake shaped like a soccer ball. He had neat black hair, a round, serious face, and a single dimple on his left cheek. The same dimple, the exact same dimple. The same jaw, not yet sharpened by age, but the architecture was unmistakable, like seeing a building before its facade was completed. The same eyebrows, slightly furrowed in thought. The same way of holding the mouth slightly pursed, in the photos where he wasn't smiling. Kim Jae-won, at 10 years old, looking out at Amara from 47 individual framed photographs. Except Jae-won was 35 now, and these photos were recent. The boy in these photos was wearing a North Face jacket that Amara recognized from last autumn's collection. He was holding what appeared to be a Nintendo Switch in the gaming photo. In the birthday picture, the cake had 10 candles and what looked like a recent model Samsung phone in a slim case visible on the table behind it. This was not a childhood photo collection. This was a 10-year-old boy, who looked exactly like her husband. Photographed recently. Amara lowered the mug very slowly. "Destiny," she said. Her voice was extremely calm in the way that very deep water is extremely calm right before it reveals it is actually the ocean. "What is this?" Destiny appeared in the doorway behind her, still in her raspberry Stella McCartney, holding her own mug of tea with both hands, watching Amara with the precise expression of someone who has rehearsed this moment 12 times and is still not ready for it. "Okay," Destiny said. Destiny. I need you to take 3 breaths first." "I will not be taking 3 breaths." "Amara, who is this child?" Destiny put her mug down on the coffee table, the good one, the marble one from the boutique in Insadong, and crossed her arms slowly over her raspberry blazer. She had the look of a woman delivering a verdict she had not written and did not endorse. "His name," Destiny said carefully, "is Kim Soo-hyun. He is 10 years old. He lives with his mother. Her name is Park Ji-yeon, in Mapogu." The room was extremely quiet. "And you know this how?" Amara said. Not a question. A request for inventory. Destiny sat down on the sectional. She picked up her mug again, then put it back down. She tugged at her blazer lapel in the way she did when she was lawyering herself into a sentence. "I was doing research," she said. "For a client, it's not important. I was cross-referencing some financial records and, Amara, baby, listen, I found some things. Transfers. Property registered in Park Ji-yeon's name. School fees paid by a company subsidiary that I know is one of J1's. Monthly deposits completely consistent for the past 10 years. Starting 9 months, almost exactly 9 months, before Soo-hyun's birth. Amara sat down. She didn't decide to sit. Her body made the executive decision without her. She sat on Destiny's sectional in her cream Celine suit, her Manolo Blahniks pressed together at the ankle, her Chloe bag still on her shoulder, and she looked at the wall of a 10-year-old boy with her husband's face. "He's 10, Amara said. "Yes. You met J1 when he came to New York. The party. We were 23 and 25. Yes. He had a child. He had a child. A 10-year-old child. Amara." "He had a 10-year-old child," Amara said. "And a dimple, and he came to New York in a Tom Ford suit, and She stopped. She pressed her fingers to her mouth. And then, in a way that neither of them had prepared for, she started to laugh. Not soft laughter. Not polite laughter. The kind of laughter that comes from a place so far past the point of reason that the body doesn't know what else to do with it. Full, whole-body laughter. Slightly too loud. Definitely slightly hysterical. The kind that made the gold on her wrist shake and her coils bounce and her eyes water immediately. "Amara. He has a dimple," Amara wheezed, pointing at the wall. "Destiny. I married the dimple. I thought it was his dimple. That is not his dimple. That is a legacy dimple. It has been passed on. There is a 10-year-old in Mapogu walking around with my dimple. It is technically not your dimple. I have been kissing that dimple for 3 years. Please don't calculate that. It is a family heirloom, Destiny. It is a dimple lineage." And then Amara stopped laughing, just as suddenly as she started. The silence came back. She looked at the wall. The boy in the soccer birthday photo had frosting on his school uniform collar and was grinning at whoever was behind the camera. Grinning the exact way J1 grinned when something genuinely delighted him, unguarded and warm, the left dimple deep. Her eyes filled. "He's beautiful," she whispered. Destiny moved across the sectional and put her arm around Amara. Raspberry Stella McCartney against Cream Celine, and neither of them said anything for a long time. Outside, Seoul hummed and glittered in the afternoon. Inside, a very important wall had come down. J1 came home on Friday evening. Amara knew the exact moment she heard the elevator arrive at their floor. A sound she had always liked, always associated with warmth and arrival, and the particular settling of her own chest that happened when he came back from trips. She was standing in the living room when the door opened, wearing a deep burgundy Bottega Veneta slip dress with thin gold straps, her hair in long Senegalese twists pinned partially up, gold drop earrings, no shoes, a glass of wine in her hand that she had been holding for 30 minutes without drinking. He came in looking tired and beautiful and carrying a small paper bag that, by the familiar shape and scent already reaching her, contained the almond pastries from her favorite bakery in Apgujeong, the ones he only brought when he'd missed her specifically. He saw her standing there. He smiled. The dimple appeared. Amara looked at it with entirely new and complicated feelings. "You look incredible," he said, setting his bag down on the entryway table and shrugging off his coat. A long charcoal Loro Piana overcoat that she had helped him pick out the previous winter, standing together in the boutique, her hands smoothing the lapel, his chin resting briefly on her head from behind. "Thank you," she said. Something in her voice made him pause. He was perceptive, J1. It was one of the things she had loved about him, the way he read her, the way he actually watched and listened. Right now, standing in his navy Brunello Cucinelli suit, tie loosened, pastry bag in hand, he was reading her, and whatever he found made him go still in the careful way of a man who recognizes territory. "Amara," he said. "Tell me about Kim Soo-hyun," she said. The pastry bag touched the table. "Sit down," he said quietly. "I don't want to sit down. Please." She sat. He sat across from her, and for a moment he looked out at the Han River through the floor-to-ceiling windows, black and gold and moving in the night, with an expression she had never seen on him before. Something old, something heavy carried for years. "He is my son," Jae-won said. "He is 10. His name is Soo-hyun. He lives with his mother, Ji-yeon. It was before us, Amara. Before New York, before you. It was over between Ji-yeon and me. But she was already pregnant when it ended. And I didn't know until Soo-hyun was almost 3 months old." Amara was very quiet. "Why didn't you tell me?" she said. Not with anger. With something more devastating than anger. Genuine bewilderment. J1. You didn't tell me. His jaw worked. The dimple in grief disappeared. I was afraid, he said. I know what that sounds like, but I found you. I found you, Amara, and I was terrified that if I told you about Soohyun, about Ji-Yun, about all of it, I would lose you before you ever really knew me. Before you could see that everything I am with you is real. I was a coward. I know that. A coward, she repeated softly. You hid a child, J1. You hid a son. You hid a human being who exists and has your face and your dimple. I know. And I have been your wife for 3 years, and I found out from a wall of photographs in my best friend's apartment. I know, Amara. I know. Do you see him? Yes, regularly. He knows me. I am part of his life, his upbringing. I pay for everything. I am there. I kept the 2 parts of my life separate. I am not proud of it. She stood and walked to the window. Seoul was luminous below them. Thousands of lights and thousands of lives. Each contained. Each sealed. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and felt its solidity against her hand. The business, she said without turning. The import and export. The men who come. The calls in the other room. A pause. Amara, tell me. All of it. Right now. Because I will not survive another wall. The silence stretched long enough that she turned to look at him. He was watching her with an expression that contained the entirety of their 3 years together. Every dinner, every Sunday morning, every laugh, every almond pastry from Apgujeong. And beneath all of it, something much older and much heavier. You know what I am, he said quietly. It was not a question. She closed her eyes. She had always known. Some part of her. The part she told to be quiet, to not ask, to accept the warmth and leave the shadows alone. How deep, she said. He told her. She stood at the window in her burgundy Bottega Veneta dress, barefoot on the cold marble floor, and she listened to her husband tell her exactly what kind of man he was. The organization, the family, not of blood but of structure and hierarchy and obligation that began before he was born and would not end when he died. The things he oversaw, the lines he had and hadn't crossed, the reason certain people stood when he entered rooms. When he finished, the apartment was very quiet. Your mother, Amara said. Mrs. Kim. She looked at me at the wedding. She knew you didn't know. She didn't think it was right. She and I argued about it many times. Your mother has more courage than you do. Yes, he said. She does. Amara picked up her wine glass and drank from it. Finally, in one long swallow, she set it down. She looked at her husband, the man she had married across 2 continents, the man who brought her almond pastries and noticed her sadness from across a room and had looked at her in a Manhattan rooftop and made her entire nervous system rearrange itself. I need, she said carefully, to call my mother. I know. And then I need you to not be in this apartment for a little while. He stood. He straightened his already perfect Brunello Cucinelli jacket with the automatic dignity of a man who had been groomed since childhood to hold himself together. He walked to the entryway, picked up his coat. He paused at the door. Everything I have ever felt for you, he said, has been real. I need you to know that. Whatever you decide, it has all been real. The door closed. Amara sat alone in her beautiful apartment above Seoul, in her burgundy dress, and she called her mother in Atlanta. Patricia Johnson picked up on the second ring. Baby, her mother said, because mothers always know. Tell me, Amara told her. There was a long pause from Atlanta. I told you, Patricia said, with grief and love in equal measure. That smile knew more than it told. You did, Mama. What are you going to do? Amara looked at the Han River. I don't know yet, she said. But I'm going to call Destiny first, and then I'm going to eat the almond pastries he brought home, and I'm going to think. Good, Patricia said. That's good, baby, you think. And Amara? Yes, Mama. Whatever you decide. You are not less. You hear me? You are not one thing less. Amara pressed her hand to her mouth for the second time in 3 days. I hear you, Mama, she whispered. She called Destiny. Destiny arrived within 40 minutes in a forest green Acne Studios coat over caramel-colored toe-team wide-leg trousers and block-heeled Ganni boots the color of chestnuts, carrying 2 bottles of wine and the specific expression of a woman who has been ready for this conversation and is deeply sad that it became necessary. They sat on the floor of Amara's living room, the expensive marble, the view of the river, surrounded by the contents of the almond pastry bag and 2 open bottles of wine, and they talked until 3 in the morning. Amara had changed into a silk Olivia von Halley pajama set, blush pink with gold piping, and had her twists loose around her shoulders. Destiny had removed her boots and her coat and sat cross-legged with her trousers pulled around her, and they looked, together, like 2 women in a painting about something important. "Can you forgive him?" Destiny asked. "I don't know," Amara said. "I've been trying to figure out which thing I'm angrier about. The sun, Soo-hyun? I don't think I'm angry about Soo-hyun. Exactly. He's a child. He didn't choose any of this. He's just a little boy with a dimple and a Nintendo Switch, and he deserves to exist without being someone's shameful secret. He's not being raised as a secret. Jae-won is in his life." "He was a secret from me," Amara said. "That's what I can't." She stopped, picked up her wine. "Destiny. I would have understood. I'm not a fragile person. I'm not someone who runs from complicated. If he had told me in New York, if he had sat across from me at that first dinner and said, 'I have a child. I'm actively co-parenting. Here is the situation,' I would have asked questions and I would have respected the honesty. I might have made a different choice, but it would have been my choice. He took that from me." "Yes," Destiny said quietly. "He did. And the other thing," Amara set the glass down. "What he is. What he does. I can't be married to someone and be kept outside. The whole truth of their life. I can't live in a penthouse built on things I'm not allowed to ask about. I'm not built for that kind of willful unknowing. It damages something in me. It's been damaging something in me for 3 years, and I didn't know what it was until this week." Destiny reached over and held her hand. They sat like that for a while. "He loves you," Destiny said, "not as a defense. As a fact that deserved acknowledgement alongside all the other facts." "I know," Amara said. "That's the saddest part, isn't it? He really does. I've never doubted that. In all 3 years, I've never once woken up and doubted that the man beside me loved me. But love isn't architecture. Love doesn't build a safe house by itself. It needs truth underneath it. It needs honesty as the foundation. And ours was built on beautiful things, on designer suits and almond pastries and a dimple that turned out to belong to someone else first. It does belong to him also. Destiny, you know what I mean?" "I know what you mean." Amara looked out at the Han River. It was very late and very dark, and the water moved with the particular patience of things that have been moving for longer than any human trouble. "I need to go home," she said. Destiny looked at her. "Atlanta," Amara clarified. "I need to go home to Atlanta. I need to be somewhere that belongs to me before Jae-won. I need my mother and my old bedroom and the specific smell of my mother's cooking, and I need to not be in a penthouse in Seoul for a while. And then I don't know." She booked the flight 3 days later. In the days between the decision and the departure, she and Jae-won existed in the apartment in a gentle, devastating orbit, near each other, careful with each other, achingly aware of each other. He cooked for her, which he rarely did. She wore her most beautiful things. Not for him, but because beauty had always been her armor and her language and her most honest self-expression. And she needed to be honest now. She wore a deep plum Oscar de la Renta gown to absolutely no occasion, just to sit by the window and watch the river. She wore a fuchsia Giambattista Valley blouse with wide white trousers to walk in the park alone. She wore a gold sequined balmain dress to dinner with Destiny on their last night, and Destiny matched her in silver Valentino, and they went to the finest restaurant in Gangnam and ate and laughed and cried twice each and laughed again, and the other diners kept looking at them because they were spectacular, because they were incandescent, because whatever grief looked like, it was not supposed to look like that, not like 2 black women in gold and silver being ferociously, defiantly beautiful while their hearts were cracking along careful lines. Jae-won drove her to Incheon Airport himself. He wore a black Dior suit. He had not slept. His eyes held 3 years of mornings. He carried her bags to the check-in counter with the quiet efficiency of a man performing the last useful act he is permitted. At the security line, he stopped. I know that you may not come back, he said. I know I have done something that may be too large for love to cover. But I want you to know. J1. Please let me say it. She was in a Camel Max Mara wrap coat over an ivory-ribbed toe team dress. Her twists pinned up, her eyes full of something too complex for any single word. She looked at him and felt the whole weight of 3 years. Years, real warmth, real laughter, real Sunday mornings. Pressing down on her chest. The 3 years were real, he said. You gave me the best 3 years of my life. The way you walk into a room. The way you laugh at your own jokes before the punchline. The way you spend 45 minutes picking accessories and then wear exactly the right ones. The way you say my name. All of it has been the greatest privilege I have ever been given. And I threw a part of it away before it even started, out of fear, and I will not forgive myself for that. But I want you to know that I see you. I have always seen you. Every part. She pressed her palm flat against his chest, over his Dior jacket, over his heart. She felt it beating. Goodbye, J1, she said. She walked through security. She did not look back. Not because she didn't want to, but because she knew that if she turned around, if she saw him standing there in his black suit with his ruined eyes and his inherited dimple, she would stay, and staying right now, before she had found the ground beneath her own feet again, would be choosing love as an escape from the truth rather than as a companion to it. And she was worth more than that. She had always been worth more than that. The plane lifted from Incheon into a gray Seoul morning. Below her, the Han River moved with its ancient patience, indifferent and eternal, keeping all its secrets and surrendering none of them. Amara pressed her forehead against the cold window. She was wearing her cobalt blue Givenchy, the same one from the rooftop in Manhattan, the night this whole story had started. She had found it at the back of her wardrobe the night before and put it in her carry-on without deciding to. The way the body sometimes knows things before the mind catches up. She watched Seoul shrink. She did not cry until the clouds came. And then she cried fully and without apology, the way she did everything, with her whole self holding nothing back, because Amara Johnson had always understood that feeling things completely was not weakness. It was the most expensive thing she owned. 3 months later, she got a letter. Paper, handwritten, in J1's careful English. Sent to her mother's house in Atlanta, where she had been living in her old bedroom, working with local clients, eating her mother's cooking, sleeping 11 hours a night, slowly and deliberately rebuilding the architecture of herself. The letter said, Soohyun would like to meet you. Not now, not unless you want to. But he has seen your photo. I kept our wedding photo on my desk even now, and he asked me who you were. I told him you were someone very important. He said you had beautiful clothes. I told him he was correct. He has my dimple. I hope someday that makes you smile instead of something else. I am not asking you to come back. I am only telling you that whatever you choose, I will spend the rest of my life being someone who deserved you more than I was. I don't know if that is enough. I suspect it isn't. But it is what I have. You walked away in your cobalt dress. I watched until I couldn't see you anymore. I am still watching, in every way that matters. J1. Amara read the letter at the kitchen table, in an oversized vintage Kenzo sweatshirt and sweatpants. Her hair in a puff, no jewelry, no shoes. Just herself. Her mother came in, saw her face, and put a cup of tea beside her without a word. Amara folded the letter. She put it in the pocket of her sweatshirt, close to her chest. She looked out the kitchen window at Atlanta, green and loud and alive, and she stayed with the feeling for a long time, not running from it, not resolving it, just letting it be what it was. Love and loss and the particular grief of a thing that was real and beautiful and not, in the end, enough. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The future was not a thing she could dress for in advance. She picked up her tea. Outside, a cardinal landed on the fence post. Red and sudden and unbothered. It sang a few notes and flew away. Amara watched it go. Outside the window, life continued. Loud and luminous and completely indifferent to how beautifully dressed she was. She smiled a little. She drank her tea.
Hi guys, in this story we learn that love without truth cannot fully survive, no matter how beautiful it looks from the outside. Amara wanted a love where she was trusted with the whole truth, not protected from it. This is the difference between romance and partnership. Kindly like and subscribe.